Good morning, our viewers.
Make notes.
We are here under the auspices of International Commission for Human Rights and Religious Freedom as part of the Speaking Up series. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the executive team of the ICHRRF, I invite all our audience to yet another lecture in the ICHRRF Speaking Up series. A little bit about ICHRRF. International Commission for Human Rights and Religious Freedom is a US-based nonprofit focused on upholding human rights and religious freedom through continuous monitoring, policy intervention, and collaboration. We are focused on educational, research, legal, and human rights advocacy and charitable purposes, and strive to be an advocate for the human rights and religious freedom of underrepresented communities across the world. We do believe that humankind can no longer afford to be selectively vocal about the rights of only a specific set of people. A humane and just world necessitates fair treatment of all living beings. Our focus is on the rights of indigenous communities and their freedom, free speech, and their cultural preservation. Some of our initiatives include monitoring violations of the freedoms and sanctity of religious and philosophical minorities across the world, research into documentation of the culture, history, and challenges faced by such communities, policy recommendations on human rights, religious diversity, and pluralism to international organizations, agencies, national and local governments. We do provide collaboration to support cultural and philosophical diversity across the world. We have conducted special hearings on human rights violations in various countries. We do run a Ved P. Nanda Fellowship Training Program in Human Rights. In September of 2023, we conducted the first Forgotten Genocides Convention in Washington, D.C. at GW University. And we are also involved in publication of books through the ICHRRF Press. Those of you who have been to our website might have seen our logo. That's our logo. Today is Saturday, November 18, 2023. And we are going to be discussing human rights violation of Uyghurs in communist China. And our distinguished speaker today is Elfidar Iltebir. And you will be seeing her very soon. This is a picture of the Uyghurs in Chinese camps. Historically, the region Uyghurs reside in is called East Turkestan. In Mandarin, it's called Xinjiang, which literally means new province or new frontier, suggesting thereby that it was not part of the original China. It has been a restive occupied province under Beijing's communist rule. Its Turkic Uyghur population has ancient roots in Tengriism, which originated in Mongolia. It's like a shamanism kind of practice. During the time of epic Mahabharata, the people living in this region were called the Uttar Kuru or the Northern Kurus, who had participated in the great battle of Mahabharata. Uyghurs are now a Muslim culture, and East Turkestan was an independent nation in 20th century till Communist Party of China and its forces called PLA invaded it and took over. Uyghurs' struggle for genuine autonomy and independence has been in the face of unprecedented repression, re-education camps, and cultural genocide in the modern world. After we have a lecture by our distinguished speaker, we will have some questions and answers. So our distinguished speaker is Elfidar Iltebir. She was born in Urumchi in East Turkestan and grew up in Istanbul in Turkey up until migrating to US in year 2000. She has a BA in marketing from George Mason University and over 20 years of marketing and project management experience. She has taught the Uyghur language to US government employees. As the daughter of a prominent Uyghur writer and journalist, she is an active member of the Uyghur community and an outspoken human rights activist. In the last 3 years, she has served as the Secretary General of UAA and is now the President. With her excellent performance for the community and creative approaches to raise awareness projects, she was elected President of UAA in May 2022. She is currently a structure analyst in an energy firm. She is fluent in English, Uyghur, and Turkish languages. So that is a little bit of introduction of our distinguished speaker. Before I give platform to Elfidar, there are some housekeeping rules for the audience. Please mute yourself to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone to vibration mode. Please do not try to interrupt our esteemed speaker. Only the members of audience who identify themselves openly will be allowed to pose questions. No anonymous questioners, please. Please send all your questions through the chat room. Questions are moderated. Please be precise and specific in asking questions. Don't send detailed comments in the form of a monologue. Finally, this event is being recorded and it will be available on our website for viewing, and it will be an educational resource. Before I hand over the platform to Elfidar, I'm honored to say that this is not the first time we are dealing with the Uyghur issue. In a roundtable discussion, we had another Uyghur activist, Rushan Abbas, who had participated and talked about the Uyghur persecution. So this talk would be not end of our involvement on the Uyghur issue. We will continue to raise our voice using the platform of ICHRRF to uphold the religious, cultural, and ethnic rights of Uyghur people in communist China occupied East Turkestan. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to invite Elfidar. Elfidar, please go ahead with your presentation. Kindly unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. First, I would like to thank all of you for giving us an opportunity to talk about Uyghur cause, Uyghur genocide. Before we start, I just had small challenges. All of a sudden, I got freeze. I don't know if it's a Chinese attack, hacking our account. So I had to sign in from my cell phone and then sign back in here. So if that happens, please be patient. I'm going to sign in from my cell phone. Let me open up my, share my screen and open my presentation. In the meantime, 1 second. Meantime, I would like to introduce myself a little bit. I'm an Uyghur American. I was born in Urumchi in East Turkestan and left my country in 1992 and lived in Istanbul, Turkey for 8 years and then came to US in 2000. Since from childhood, my father was a journalist, reporter, writer, so I've been hearing Uyghur issues at the dinner table. You know, we talk about how our history was and how it changed so rapidly, and then now we became a minority on our own land. So let me open up my PowerPoint now. Okay. All right, let me know if you see my screen.
Not yet. We're not seeing your screen yet. Oh, yes. Yes, we can now.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, there you go. Yeah, you see the presentation. Please go ahead.
All right. So today I will be talking about the Uyghur genocide that China is uh, ongoing genocide that China is basically our Uyghur people are facing this Uyghur genocide. I want to talk about why China is doing this to us, and then there are forced labor issues that has a big role into the Uyghur genocide, and the divestment and transnational repression, and what else we can do. So Uyghurs are Central Asian Turkic people. They're uh, in Central Asia, where neighbors to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and the Mongolia and Pakistan, and of course the big um, land is with China, and we been living freely. We had our own states and the flag, the money, the military for thousands of years. We had rich history. And in 1949, we were occupied by the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese government. And since then, slowly they took our lands, took our possession, our properties. More and more Han Chinese migration immigrated to our land, East Turkestan, and they were basically killing the livelihood of Uyghurs. Basic political expression became like criticizing the government, and that's how it started slowly and slowly. We were able to speak our own language in our school, like I went to Uyghur school, and Chinese was second language. That also changed by time. And with in 1949, the Uyghur population was 92 to 96%, and rest were Chinese Han Chinese population. And it has changed by time, and today it's almost 60-70% is Han Chinese, and we became minority on our own land. Why China is like in the past, it was a discrimination. It was treating us like a second-class citizen. We were not getting, equal opportunities. The head of the government was Chinese, so we were complaining back then. And like 1980s, there were China's one-child policy, and for Uyghurs minorities, it was only two, but we had to get permission from the government. And my mom, for example, faced to forced abortion multiple times. So it's just like a drug test. They come in the morning, take all the women, and if you're pregnant, you have to do abortion. So we were complaining of those assimilation and discrimination and all that. However, in 2009, when there was a Urumchi massacre, it was a little more clear that the Uyghurs are distinct, that totally different from the Han Chinese. We have different, our rich history, our language, our religion. Nothing is the same as Han Chinese, and that keeps us apart. And there was a conflict in 2009 Urumchi massacre, which was caused by, again, forced labor that the state imposed back then, because many Uyghurs, especially youth, young Uyghur men and women, were transferred to inner China for the factories, and there they had to work for very minimal salary, or like the hourly pay. But Han Chinese in those inner China factories were complaining because their um, payment, the salary or the hourly payment decreased because of the almost free Uyghur employees, right, brought by the government. So there were conflict there, and that's how you know, that began in Shogun toy factory. Some Chinese were attacked to Uyghurs, claiming Uyghurs are attacking Chinese, and there were many Uyghurs, you know, died in that incident, and then government didn't give any explanation, and then the Uyghurs in Urumchi wanted to ask for justice, ask for, you know, what happened to their loved ones. And that's how Urumchi demonstrations started, and China cracked down and arrested so many people. And that's how conflict got more clear in 2009, if you will, you know, ask my opinion. Uyghurs had okay life until during 1980s, but after Soviet Union separated, China got a little more scared of that might happen to Uyghurs, and they strengthened their control over our region. So the reasons why China is committing genocide is because China cannot accept the diversity. They want one Han Chinese homogeneous land that they can control tightly. And then also our geopolitical and economic, you know, geopolitical place, because we connect China to Europe and, you know, all around the world for their trade. So for the One Belt, One Road initiatives, they need those lands, those roads, especially the East Turkestan, to be strong controlled in order to continue their trade. And also Xi Jinping, when he took place, as you know, now he's like a dictator, his term never ends. He wanted to have a final solution for Uyghur issue. He wanted to have all Han Chinese population there in strong control, and if possible, eradicate Uyghurs so they have one big Han Chinese population. As I talked about our geographical, geopolitical occasion, we our land pass all China's like gas pipeline, Silk Road, and the One Belt, One Road, you know, roads, and connects China to the world. And besides that, of course, East Turkestan is rich in oil, rich in critical minerals, rich in gold and other elements. It's a big land, right? It's also a solution for China's population issue. So those are other reasons why China would not, you know, give us our freedom and control us tightly. Starting 2016, we got disconnected from our loved ones, relatives, friends back home. The one by one, our friends were deleting our account in our, like, we call it WeChat, but it's like a WhatsApp group. They were like deleting our numbers, so we couldn't communicate our friends and relatives back home, and we were wondering what's going on. And then slowly we heard that people are disappearing, getting detained, and we still were not sure what's going on. And then until the Canadian researcher showed the satellite map of the camps, China was denying there's such, you know, camps were happening. Once the Canadian researcher proved those camps with the maps and images, then China said, oh, those are re-education center, you know, training, vocational training centers. And then we start hearing from the camp survivors, from the hacked documents, from people, brave people posting videos here and there, that those were actually modern day concentration camps. And they were more than 400, around 500 camps built in East Turkestan. Some of them can help as many as 70,000 people. As you see here on 2015, that land was flat in Urumchi, in the Beijing, and then in 2019, there was a forced labor camp that can hold 70,000 people. So what is going on in those camps? that we heard from our camp survivors. We have 4 camp survivors in the US. They were able to escape because their husband was foreign citizen. One of them has a Kazakh husband, another one has Pakistani husband. So they worked with their government, they worked with the media and get those camp survivors out of China under the permission of visiting the husband for certain period of time, and they sign a lot of papers not to talk about what's happening in the camp. But once they're out, we heard from Mikrogül Tursun, from Tursunay Ziyabudun, from Zumret Davut and Gulzire Avulkan, and many others, that in those camps, they were actually besides the political indoctrination, there were torture going on, there were sexual abuses, rape, organ harvesting, starvation, sterilization, so many things going on in those camps. And outside the camps were not spared either, because there are cameras everywhere. It's like a state-run surveillance state image in everywhere. So people are not free to do anything and monitored 24/7. Earlier, I talked about the forced labor practices causing the 2009 Urumchi massacre. So what is the impact of forced labor in genocide, like what we're talking about now? Is first of all, the forced labor, under the forced labor, China is trying to so-called surplus labor issue. They're saying that they're helping for the surplus labor, and they're transferring Uyghurs to inner China and then migrating more Han Chinese into our land for the jobs, and saying by doing this, they are diluting the Uyghur population in our homeland. So that made us, become a minority. And with taking especially young Uyghur women marriage age to the inner China or the factories built in our region inside the prison or inside the camps, they're keeping away the Uyghur women who at the age, they're at the age of giving a birth, they're keeping away those young people away so they don't give more Uyghur babies, right? Give birth. So that's another way of controlling the population. And also, with the forced labor, while parents are taken to the factories or prison factories or inner China, children are also sent to state-run orphanages, kindergartens, and boarding schools. This is very dangerous, actually, because while their parents are faced to indoctrination and all facing a genocide out of their homeland, children are also stripped away from their identity, their language, their religion, their culture, and there they're being raised as a loyal CCP subject, like basically Uyghur looking, but Han Chinese, raising up as a Han Chinese. And this is very dangerous for our future, because children are our future. So that's why forced labor is the biggest tool, that China is not just taking advantage and making more money, more profits out of us. They're also eradicating the Uyghur language, culture, religion, and separating families. We talked about forced sterilization earlier. According to Adrian Zen's AP report, the birth rate fell from 2015 to 2018 as 60%. We're talking about a big number, and then around 24% in 2019, and it keeps decreasing. Our population is 25 to 30 million. However, with these decrease, 1/3 is put in the camps, and another 1/3 is sent in the forced labor camps and forced labor factories and prisons. The rest are like just following the Han Chinese, the Chinese government's rules. So they're trying to decrease our number day by day to eradicate us. I talked about the children sent to state-run orphanages earlier. Some of the parents found out their kids' photos in those propaganda videos that China is telling the world that they're taking care of the Uyghur kids. But the situation is very hard. Kids are also faced to harsh punishment when they speak our own language. There is no way to practice our religion, and that has been going on. This report is a little old right now. It's closer to 1 million Uyghur children are put into the orphanages and boarding schools. This is talking about divestment. I would like to go back there. Let me talk about a little bit in religion in East Turkestan. As you know, we had historical mosques. We had other religions that earlier we talked about, but since we became Muslim, accepted Islam during Sultan Saad Burahan, we practice Islam as much as we can. We fast, we pray. However, there were a lot of restrictions back then because like government employees, school students were not able to pray, but elderly people were able to pray. But with the Uyghur genocide started 2016, this has changed, and hundreds of mosques were destroyed, demolished. Some were changed to bars, restaurants, and the religious practice is completely banned for Uyghurs, because that is one reason of getting arrested. So giving a religious name like Fatma or Muhammad was banned. Wearing a religious outfits or having a beard or wearing a scarf was banned. That can be a reason for being taken to concentration camps. And also people were they tried to continue to practice their religion, and for example, I heard they were fasting in the bathrooms at nights in the toilets, because if their light is on during Ramadan, the government checks the houses, and if they see the light is on, they know they're fasting and they get arrested. So today it's because of strong control. Also, religious is very practiced very less, unfortunately, but that is one part of our identity. So we continue, because when you believe in God and in another world in heaven, I think it gives you a little bit calmness to bear with what's going on. Believing in the other world, you will get rewarded, I guess. So that's why Uyghur people are also trying to hold themselves together, even though there are some suicidal news, but most of them are trying to bear what is going on in back home. While China is helping other Muslim countries building mosques or donating other Islamic countries, they are burning Qurans, destroying mosques and not allowing us to practice our religion in our home, in our East Turkestan, unfortunately. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why some of the Islamic countries there, some have also very powerful dictatorship, and some countries, governments are not really helping Uyghur cause, thinking that being effective with the propaganda China has, and also political incentives they're offering. And also some are scared of retaliation or punishment from the Chinese government, because most of the time some people ask, like, why if you guys are Muslim countries are not helping you? And I think those are the reasons why. The public, however, are very helpful. The people do support. However, the governments are the one who controls the media, who controls the actions, are not really supporting. So talking about the economy of China, their economy is built on this genocide, built on the forced labor. And the technology they use is actually us as in US, we allow them to get access to the technology US has, so they improve their technology for the cameras, or so we need to have like export controls, import restrictions, and also the US US government employees' retirement money is also being invested in those companies that are supporting genocide, and we don't realize how much we are helping unintentionally to this genocide, to the China's economy, that we need to be careful of. So in China, how it works is that government controls every single thing, right? There is no free trade. There is no, everything is by government's decision. So any Western companies operating in East Turkestan has to work with the government, basically, or being to, and therefore directly linked to the Uyghur genocide, the policies, and forced labor. So another thing I would like to talk about is the transnational repression. So genocide is still ongoing. Millions are put into concentration camp, prisons, and others. Recently, China is changing its tactics, its strategy, and they're transferring most of the Uyghurs from concentration camps to prison with 10 years, 20 years in a prison life. And some of them are, life in sentence. And they are telling, look, we're closing the concentration camps. People, it's, getting less and less people in the camps, which is not true. None of the intellectuals, the writers, the professors, the artists, doctors, they're not released. And China is also making cosmetic changes and remove the checkpoints on the streets that used to be everywhere in East Turkestan. They made less checkpoints is because they made all Uyghurs download an app to their phone so they can monitor 24/7 what they're watching, what they're texting, what they're sending. And also it's a surveillance state. There are cameras everywhere. Every house, in the rural area has the barcodes that China can check who's living in that house. So it's still like strong control 24/7, even though there's checkpoints are removed. And we are Uyghur American Association. We have members all around the US. We're like a primary hub, and we get phone calls, emails all the time. And while we're asking our Uyghur community members here, we didn't hear people are getting released, our loved ones, our family members. And only several ones that were released are dying right after their release, because I believe the government doesn't want to blamed on killing them in the camps, in the prisons. So while they're in a critical situation, because they did not get treatment in those camps, right? So they were being released, and they're dying in weeks or months, unfortunately. We, as an Uyghurs in the diaspora, trying to be voice for those voiceless people in our home, we were not activists, but we had no choice to be an activist, to speak about this truth. And we trying to educate ourselves and then educate others. So Uyghur community members, we held big events in our, Uyghur Center, Uyghur schools. We shared each other's stories, and we said what we can do for our people. And that's when we decided to gather in like hundreds, I'm talking about, to the Capitol Hill, and knocked every single door of the US Congress members and shared our true stories, holding photos. This is my mom, this is my brother, this is my father in the camp. I am a US citizen, please help me. And we did this for weeks and weeks. We like slept on the Capitol Hill, trying to share those stories with every single Congress members, ask for help. We found the constituent, we find allied groups, faith groups or other NGOs, civil society groups, and we shared our stories and asked them for help. Like if we don't have constituent in Iowa or in North Dakota, we found 1 or 2 Uyghurs there to contact other groups to advocate our cause and knock the door of that Congress members. So that's how we were able to get attention of the Congress members, and we passed 2 major bills, Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act and then Uyghurs Forced Labor Prevention Act. That was a major success. Like when we were going to the hills, for example, all the Uber drivers were driving us for free. Uyghur restaurants were providing food for us for free. And we all get together, we translate the bills to in our language, and we, advocate it. And after the hard work, we were able to pass these 2 bills. The second bill, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, is a very big, unprecedented bill, because that bill says any product made in East Turkestan, parts or the full products or the raw materials, cannot enter US unless it's proven that it's not made with Uyghur forced labor. So US government literally put humanity top of the profits, because when we were advocating, when we were lobbying, there were some US corporations, they were advocating against us, like Coca-Cola, Nike, Apple. They were saying it's going to hurt US economy, it's going to hurt the corporations. But with believing in humanity and our hard work, and like civil society groups like you guys, with all the combined allies and together in solidarity, we were able to pass that bill. And now it's implemented, although it has some gaps and loops here and there, but so many products are stopped at the borders and checked. Because of those successes, China did accelerated what we call transnational repression. That means they're China's extraterritorial control harassments. So Uyghurs outside China is also being threatened, harassed by the Chinese government. Basically, during those times, 2019, 18, we had so many people, hundreds of people were coming out, speak out about the truth, but they're decreased by number because of the retaliation or the transnational repression of the Chinese government. Chinese police had the guts to call every single Uyghurs in the diaspora and tell them to delete that tweet, stop talking about it, do not go to political events. They're holding our family hostage back home and control our actions here on the US soil, the land of the free, and in other countries even worse. That's why, for example, in these photos, the Yusufjan Ahmet in Turkey was forced to be a spy for Chinese government. They do this a lot with the students, saying that we have your parents, we will take them in the camps. If they're in the camps, you might not see them again. They will be sentenced for life, or they can be killed. You have to work for us. That's how they push it. Another way of pushing it is the students, when their Chinese passport expired, when they want to renew, they said, go back home and renew it. They don't want to renew it at the embassies overseas. And that way, once the students goes back home, they get arrested and detained, put in the camps. Any students educated outside the China, if they stayed longer, it's considered as a threat to Chinese government stability, because they are open to Western ideology or open to democracy, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And they think those students, when they went back and they go home, they will educate others and create a threat to Chinese government's communist systems stability. So transnational repression increased a lot, that more and more people are afraid to speak out these days. I have the privilege of having my immediate family in the US. Although my father passed away a couple of years ago, I was threatened too. My house address was posted and say, we're watching you, and trying to silence us, scare us and silence us, basically. But I reported to FBI. We tell our community members to share everything, the phone number of the police called them, when they called them, and like, for example, mine, when they gave me those, you know, threatening messages, sent me those threatening messages, and we shared with FBI and they're monitoring. And I have cameras 3 sides of my house because I was scared too with their, you know, those harassments. Now I feel have a little more peace of mind. My family is here, but that is the issues Uyghurs are facing in the diaspora, unfortunately. I talked about the 2 bills that passed in the recent years. Of course, so many sanctions were under the Magnitsky sanctions were took place imposed to some of the government officials. There were visa restrictions, export controls, import restrictions in the past, but we believe this is not enough. And as you know, both Trump and Biden administration determined what's going on, those abuses, those crimes against humanity as a genocide in recent years as well. And since then, right now, 12 other governments and countries and parliaments declared it as genocide. However, still some other countries are not acknowledging the genocide because some of them says we don't have a big mass number of killed Uyghurs, like numbers. Our answer to that is China is very well known of studying the UN, basically the rules and the Genocide Convention and how UN works, and they take action accordingly. So the organ harvesting, for example, when there is camps, there are hospitals and crematorium around it. As our religion, we don't believe to be cremated. We like to be burned, you know, we like to be buried, not burned. However, their crematoriums around in our region increase because they're doing the organ harvesting. Once they take the organs, they basically cremate the body so they don't have the world doesn't have the head counts of how many people they killed. So they're taking smart steps to hiding the mass number of Uyghurs killed. Also, I don't know if you heard about the halal organs. Everyone goes into the camps and prisons, they go through full biometrics, right? The DNA, the blood checks, the x-rays, and then their all data, DNA data, is stored as a big database, and that is ready for a Chinese government to use for their organ business. And if you go to China's website of organ donors, you will see around 6 million people. And Chinese people as well, they don't believe to be donating their organs, but the donors are 6 million. However, if you need an organ from China, they can match your DNA and provide you the organ in 2 weeks. That's unbelievable, because in UK, for example, their donors is 24 million, and UK, you need to wait for 6 months to 2 years to get that organ with the 24 million donors. With 6 million donors given on website on Chinese, donors, they can match you and get you in for surgery in 2 weeks. That shows that they have a big database of that. And now you're hearing that they're collecting DNA of Tibetans as well. So that is very dangerous, that what is going on in our homeland is expanding. What happened to us today is going to be Tibet's and Hong Kong's and other countries tomorrow's. And we never know what's going to happen next, because those surveillance cameras are also being sold to other countries, third world countries, African countries, saying that, look, I am doing this and still getting away with it, and my economy is good. You can do it too. So they're selling this surveillance state technology as well. So UN had multiple reports. The most recent report was the Bachelot's report. that is released a couple of years ago. However, there were no concrete actions after the report. They announced as crimes against humanity, not genocide. But even with that, crimes against humanity, more other actions needs to be taken, and we're still waiting. They were voting in UN to hold China accountable, like a beginning of a resolution. However, that was voted 17-19, and we lost, and many countries sided on China's side, unfortunately. And what we can do to help Uyghurs. So just like this, raise awareness events. Inform and educate more people, because a lot of people knows about the genocide, but they don't know the severity of the genocide, how bad it is, and what it's still continuing. So organizing raise awareness events in universities, in faith houses like mosques, churches, and synagogues, it helps to inform more people, and then they can also share what they learned with others. And also support the Uyghur organization in the diaspora, like Uyghur American Association, Uyghur Human Rights Project, and there are many other organizations. They're trying to help the Uyghurs, the survivors, and trying to raise awareness about what's going on. And contact your Congress members to advocate Uyghur-related bills. For example, right now, the Uyghur Policy Act is in the Congress. Just contact your Congress members, say, I heard about Uyghur genocide. I heard what's going on with Uyghurs, and that is very important, because there are active bills there that we need to pass and help for this cause. And then pressure UN, write a letter to UN, and don't buy made in China products, because they're made with blood and tears and sweats of the Uyghur people, with the forced labor, slave labor. And that is also not fair for the fair competition, because of course Chinese labor is so cheap because it's forced labor and slave labor. The companies need to exit China and come back to their own countries, wherever you are. If it's US, come back to US and create more jobs here, instead of outsourcing in China that use the forced labor. I think that's all that I wanted to share. I might be like jumping from topic to topic, but that is what Uyghur people are going through today, and I believe we're open for questions if you're interested in.
Thank you, Elfidar, for highlighting the plight of Uyghur minorities in PLA-controlled communist China. The picture you painted is analogous to how followers of Falun Gong have been treated by PLA. Also, similar treatments have been meted to Tibetan minorities. So PLA and Communist China are indiscriminately using similar tactics against all the minorities. And I think there is a need to work in unison with all the minorities in China and support each other. But let me go to the chat room. There are a couple of questions, and the first question is by Mr. Clemens. What is the size of Uyghur diaspora in Kazakhstan, Turkey, the US, and other countries? How are they doing, and what role they are playing in helping their homeland?
In Kazakhstan, that is the biggest diaspora community. It lives there, and Kazakhstan has around 1 million Uyghurs. And we believe in US, it is 10,000 to 15,000 Uyghurs. And in Turkey is the second major country that has the most Uyghurs, and there we believe it's like hundreds of thousands. But I honestly, I'm not the expert. We don't have exactly number, but other countries, some in Europe, and some in Pakistan, and Kyrgyzstan, and those countries. And life for us is not easy because, as you know, we are dealing with survivor's guilt. We feel guilty of having a good meal, knowing people are starving in the camps or other parts, or transnational repression that is, constantly, we are not truly free even though we're outside China, and we're dealing all those. However, even though with these pressures and harassments and threatenings, few numbers of Uyghurs are still trying to speak out about the truth and sharing to raise awareness and contacting the governments, contacting other groups to help to free Uyghur people, to help to work on closing the camps, releasing the Uyghurs from the prisons, and uniting the families.
Second question again is from Mr. Clemens. Why is the Organization of Islamic Countries not taking a strong stand against religious persecution in China?
I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. While China doing this to the Muslims in their own country, they're donating, they're building mosques in other Islamic countries to whitewash their strategy, right? So they're looking good in the face of other Islamic countries with these incentives, economical incentives, while they're trying to eradicate us and eradicate our religion in our region. They realize our religion is one part of our identity and it needs to be, treated as if it's a disease. That's what they say basically. In mosques, that the Quran verses taken out and put Chinese slogans that as if Xi Jinping is the god. In the mosque, there were, like, I didn't share here, but there were the wall posters that saying, when you say, in Islam, when we have tasbih, we say Allah Akbar, Alhamdulillah, and Subhanallah. But there it's supposed to say, thank God to the government, thank God to CCP, thank God to Xi Jinping. Like, it's unbelievable. They're changing the Quran meaning translation, so they're trying to brainwash people inside there. And from outside, they're giving economic incentives to Islamic countries and denying what they're doing there. And also, if those countries don't take China aside, they have retaliations, right? They don't they discontinue their contracts, they don't give, they punish. For example, when the Chinese prisoner got a Nobel Peace Prize, the Norway seafood products were not bought by China. And that's how they take retaliation, and some countries are afraid of that as well. So those governments, some of them are also like has a close relationship with China, and they're not taking any steps.
There's a question by Mr. Krishna Gudipati. What is your question to CCP, and what is your message to Chinese people?
I was just in San Francisco last week, came back yesterday because President Xi visited US after 6 years for the first time, and attended APEC. Our slogans there were close the camps, close the prisons, release Uyghurs, give them their freedom, let the families get united. That is our message for the Chinese government. No human beings needs to be treated this way, inhumane way, and treated not even like an animal, right? That is our message for the Chinese government, and for the US government to sanction more Chinese officials that are directly involved to Uyghur genocide, sanction the companies that are involved in Uyghur genocide, basically to take this more, not just by words, take more tangible actions.
Before 1949, when Communist China took over East Turkestan, what was the system of governance in East Turkestan?
Right before that, we had like long history of Hans, like kingdoms, and but in 1933 there were East Turkestan Islamic Republic, And then in 1944, that's the most recent government, style, is East Turkestan Republic. So we had a republic system, and that's what we had until we were occupied. However, during those days, with Russia's help, China, were basically attacking us, making us weak, and there were a lot of games played behind, like the Uyghur politicians, Congress members were killed in the plane crash, and so many games were played, and they occupied us. At the beginning, they said we are an autonomous region. However, it was slowly, basically occupied fully by the Chinese government.
So, as I said, that this is not the first time we are speaking on Uyghur cause. We have had previously Uyghur activists come and speak on our platform, and we'll continue to do that. Having said that, is there any kind of rethinking amongst Uyghur activists about acknowledging certain actions that happened in Islamic Republic of East Turkestan in 1933, when thousands of Hindu traders were massacred just because they happened to be Hindu? You're muted, Elfidar.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you look at the history, a lot of things happen in the past. Can you repeat the question? I don't want to misinterpret.
So in 1933,
Uh-huh.
Islamic Republic of East Turkestan,
Mhm.
thousands of Hindu traders were massacred in Kumul Rebellion. And the question I'm asking is that, is there any kind of rethinking on part of Uyghur activists to acknowledge the past atrocities on people of other religions done by Uyghurs?
Uh-huh. Sir, I'm not the expert, I'm not historians to answer this question fully. But as you know, we witnessed so many things because of our identity, because of our religion, because of our what we went through with the genocide now. And I don't think any human being should be persecuted or killed or treated like inhumane like this, and regardless of their religion, regardless of their nationality. So I think it will be the government officials who will answer that questions better, especially the Uyghurs in back home. But yes, as I said, we're against any those kind of terrorism and terrorist actions.
Well, it was pleasure to have you, Elfidar, on our platform. We condemn terrorism, we condemn genocide, we condemn ethnic cleansing and cultural genocide of any minority wherever they are in the world. And we have acknowledged that certain historical genocides were genocides that certain countries are not willing to acknowledge. So at a universal level, we have to do a lot of introspection. And if there are certain dark spots in our own histories, we need to acknowledge that as well. Certainly, the behavior of Communist China, PLA, Communist Party of China towards the ethnic minorities in the Chinese empire cannot be justified by any standard. And we will continue to provide platform to Uyghurs, Tibetans, Falun Gong followers, or any ethnic minority anywhere. So you have our support, and let's hope that we can continue to work for upliftment of the cause of minorities worldwide. Thank you very much, Elfidar, for your presentation.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, and thank you so much for your support.